All right, it is time for the crossover with our pals Donnie and Dhali from Donnie and Dhali on Check TV. You can check it out every Monday to Friday, 10 to noon. We are now joined by Don Taylor and Rick Dhaliwal, and a lot has happened since the last time we had a chance to chat with you guys. It wasn't too long after that the Canucks go out and make the Elias Lindholm deal. Our first chance to chat since then. So, I mean, look, where I'm asking this question after he goes out and scores 2 goals in his debut and helps the Canucks beat the Hurricanes. But what do you guys think about the trade?
Me? Yeah, go ahead. Okay. Sorry, we had an echo earlier, and everything seems to be just fine now. Well, yeah, like you say, it's easy to say all these positive things about Lindholm after last night, and I'm sure the Flames are pretty happy with things too, with what happened with Kuzmenko last night as well, and as they discover not only what he does on the ice, but his off-ice personality, which is off the charts. But hey, look, guys, how much was Kuzmenko going to play in important games down the stretch? Yeah. How much was he going to play in the playoffs? Would anybody have been surprised, given his relationship with Rick Tocchet, if he got scratched in playoff games? No. So they really, they replaced somebody in the top 6 who wasn't really in the top 6 with a legitimate top 6 player. Yes, they gave up some prospects, but they're able to keep, Villander and Lekaramaki and Podkolzin. Have to give it a thumbs up, even before last night.
I just love the fact they identified this player early, and they had a mission to get him. And it was around the 30-game mark that they said, you know what, we're going to put it all together for this guy and try to get him. And I just love the fact that, hey, this is a guy we're going after. They got him, and I don't think they gave up a king's ransom to get him. I still think Buskevich is going to be a player someday, but that's a story for down the road. The fact they had to put him in there is obviously you're not going to get this guy for cheap. You identified him. He's one of the top players available for the trade deadline, and you guys got him. You got him early. These are all staples of Jim Rutherford and the work he's done in the past at trade deadlines. And you got to look at Jim's work not only in Carolina. Everybody talks about Carolina, but Pittsburgh as well. If you think you got a shot to win it all, well, you got to do the due diligence, and he did that. And this is a great message to not only to the fans of the city, the players in the dressing room, but also to the rest of the Western Conference guys that, you know what, Vancouver just went out and did some really good work, got one of the top guys, and now let's see how the Oilers and Vegas and other teams, Colorado, how did they respond to what Vancouver did? So I just love the fact they identified him early and they got him. Mission accomplished.
Yeah, and guys, we were told, I forget who it was, Rick, who was on with us. Maybe it was you, Thomas. But at the 30-game mark is when they decided to go out and get Elias Lindholm, to go out of his way. Maybe it was you, Thomas. But they were 29-1 at that point. That was after that 4-0 win over Florida, and they just beaten Carolina and Tampa Bay. These guys have been around a long time. Alvin and especially Jim Rutherford and Rick Tocchet. So obviously at that point with that record, which is really impressive, and winning those games against those really talented teams, they thought to themselves, "This is real. Let's go out and target this guy. He's our number 1 target," and they got him.
And to your point, Rick, about sending a message and the fans getting excited, I think I know another person who's probably really excited about the trade, and that's Rick Tocchet. Because as you were saying, Donnie, you go from Kuzmenko, who's kind of playing 4th-line minutes, even when he's the top 6, a healthy scratch sometimes. Then you bring in Lindholm, and game 1, he's playing on the power play. He's out there taking draws on the face-off, and he's out there killing the game in the final seconds, right? So it's not just that you brought in somebody who can complement Elias Pettersson. I mean, already Tocchet is leaning on this guy in really key situations against a really good team in the Hurricanes.
Yeah. Yeah, what happened at the end of the game? I mean, Andrei Kuzmenko is in the locker room around then, isn't he? In a game like that. Like honestly, he's not nowhere near the ice at the. I don't mean to knock him, and he had a great debut, but just him and Tocchet, that they weren't going to coexist.
No,
and for them to get a player like Lindholm who they can trust in a situation like that, and he scores a couple of power play goals. It was really impressive. I know it's a long way to go, but really, really impressive. Probably the best Canucks debut that I can remember, and you guys can correct me if you want, 1987, Greg Adams. Anybody?
Oh, Greg Adams.
4 goals his first game as a Canuck
Yeah.
against the St. Louis Blues at the
Hard
Coliseum.
to beat that, Donnie. Greg Adams.
Yeah, what a player he was.
Oh, boy, was he ever.
1-year-old Jamie remembers it very well.
Okay, stop it.
1-year-old.
Just stop. Okay.
So you were 5 years older than Drance?
No, when do you think Drance was born?
Not long ago. Not long ago.
Not yesterday, though.
Rick, I'm curious to get your take on this, and we'll look forward for the most part. But, one benefit of getting this done early, the obvious stuff is you set the market, right? You identify a player, you go get him, you give him more runway to adjust, you strengthen your team, and on and on. But in terms of clearing the air by moving off of Kuzmenko, given that it clearly wasn't working, do you think there was a organizational sense that needed to happen, that if it festered, it could impact the team?
Yeah, well, and you're dealing with an agent, that you're talking to all the time, and Dan Milstein, right? And Dan fought hard to keep. I can't tell you guys enough how Milstein behind the scenes fought super hard to keep Kuzmenko in Vancouver. Like, he just did not want to see that guy go. At the end, he had no choice but to finally figure out, like everybody else in the city, it was not going to work with Kuzmenko and Tocchet. He just would not play the way Tocchet wanted him to play, and it just was going to end up in a divorce. But I can't tell you guys enough how hard that Milstein, he didn't want this to happen. He fought really hard behind the scenes. Every time that Kuzmenko got healthy scratched, I'd text Milstein, and he'd say, nope, it's going to be okay. I'm going to talk to the Canucks. We don't want to trade. Andre doesn't want to trade. I don't want to trade. And he fought hard to keep that guy in Vancouver. But at the end, and by the way, this will not affect Kuzmenko being traded, will not affect their relationship with Milstein. He's still got a ton of clients in Vancouver. It's a management group that likes him, and he likes Vancouver. It's not what Milstein wanted, but in the end, I think everybody finally said it was time to move on.
Lindholm, it was interesting to hear him talk yesterday because, he was talking as if everyone knows it's been a struggle for me offensively, right? Like, he was doing the answers when you have a good game, but offense has been in short supply for you all season, and maybe your confidence hasn't been very high. And that's a normal tone. Like, I'm used to talking to players in that tone after big games. But I've fallen a little bit out of practice because there aren't very many Canucks players for whom that would apply this season. It almost felt like Lindholm didn't know like how it worked around here. It's like, oh no, this is going to be a regular thing for you now, man. You're going to get a lot of goals here. Do you think that's going to be an adjustment for him in terms of the opportunities he's about to get?
Well, we're sort of going back to the Goudreau year with Tkachuk. And, 40 plus goals and being a Selke finalist. I would think at the very least he would be thinking team first. He's in a better situation here, and that the situation he's been presented with Pettersson as his center or his winger, however things work out, center last night, although Lindholm was taking some faceoffs, that he's bound to have better offensive numbers, and being on the number one power play. He's got to be pretty excited about it. You wouldn't know it after the post-game interview. He seemed pretty reserved, but that's just the way he is. How can you not be excited given the situation with the team and then individually?
Look at the power play last night, 2 for 3, right? He's going to be on a power play in Vancouver that is obviously a huge part of this hockey club. He's going to play with better players, and he's going to play on the number one team in the NHL. I mean, deep down, he's got to be absolutely the happiest guy in the world with that trade.
Sorry, Rick, but also forget about Mikheyev and Pettersson. Hard to do that. But did you not get the sense last night, and you forget about this sometimes, defensemen are part of the offense, that there's something going on between him and Quinn Hughes. And I think that first goal, especially because I'm coaching minor hockey right now and have been for a while. You tell your kids a million times, the defenseman, do not cram those shots into the shin pads. Shoot wide on purpose, and yet you should have forwards that are able to read that, and they can, wait for the puck to bounce off the boards or deflect it as it's going wide. They read each other last night on that play. And that was, and that's the first game, and I thought that was really, and of course the second goal was somewhat similar. I think that's really promising as well, along with who his line mates are up front.
Well, it's another benefit too to getting him in early, right? Giving him those extra games to build that chemistry going into the playoffs. And I thought obviously he's skating with Pettersson and Ilya Mikheyev last night, and it was interesting to hear Rick talk it. I wouldn't say criticism of Mikheyev, but acknowledging that, hey, this is a big stretch for him. I'm going to be watching him. We need to see if he can fit in with that line. And look, we all know he's, recovering from surgery. That takes time. He might not have quite the same jump, but in kind of game one of that new look line, I thought it was a pretty good showing for Ilya Mikheyev. I think if he has more performances like that, he's going to lock down that job next to Pettersson and Lindholm.
Well, his first shift, right in on the forecheck, created turnover in the corner. But the thing with Tocchet is he's already talked to Garland about, if it doesn't, he's called that on the left side. He's called that as an opening, and people have to audition for it. And if Mikheyev's not cutting it, Tocchet's not going to sit around and wait 15 games. He's already talked to Garland about possibly moving up. But Donnie and I were talking about Garland and Besser and how life changes in 12 months. And Garland, it's earlier because it was right out of training camp. I wanted a trade. He actually never did ask for a trade. But look at Besser last year to this year. The Canucks are very lucky they didn't trade these two guys. Look at the year Besser's had. I heard Besser, last year his agent was talking to a ton of teams. There was a couple of situations where there were serious discussions, but it never got done. And then Garland this year is just absolutely, look at his first period last night, crossbar and, just generating, moving your feet.
He drives the line.
He drives the line. And so I just, the biggest thing, Thomas and Jamie, is I enjoy this, this season because they've got 10 free agents. That's half the roster. 8 are UFA and 2 are RFA. I can't tell you right now what this team's going to look like next year.
Well, more reason to go after Lindholm, right?
That's it.
And maybe somebody else. And then the other thing, too, Thomas, I think you pointed this out, but Joshua last night as well with the block late versus earlier in the season when Tocchet was questioning his conditioning. He's going to be a UFA if I'm not mistaken.
He is. He's one of 8 UFAs on that roster.
He's been really impressive. Made a lot of good plays.
Guys, Joshua is third in the NHL for hits, second in forwards.
Yeah. He had the big chance in the first period, too, that Garland set up. That line, once again, one of the most consistent. When I think about that game, though, gentlemen, a lot of really good teams lost last night, right? Like, coming out of the break it's easy to have something of a letdown. And the Canucks, the effort level, the amount of fun, just the vibes around this club seem very high. I mean, you bring up the change in Garland. We're here in Boston, his hometown. He's hosting the team tonight.
Yep.
Like he's hosting the team for lobster rolls and stuff tonight. It's clear that this is a tight-knit group. Do you think we see it in performances like that last night?
Well, you know what? I think I got the sense that they were being outshot. They give up 12 shots in the third period. But you kind of got the sense, even watching on television, that they enjoyed that.
Yeah.
That this is what it's going to be like a lot. We got a target on our backs. We're going into the playoffs undoubtedly. And it was like it just seemed like they had fun holding on to that 1-goal lead. They didn't seem like they were just hanging on. They didn't seem really desperate. They seemed like they were having fun doing that. Like they were having fun at work. And now they got the lobster rolls coming.
9 days off, guys, and then they go into Carolina, outshoot the Canes 12-4 in the first period. That's impressive to me. I mean, they were ready. They were focused. It was a workmanlike effort. There's a reason why, Thomas and Jamie, there's so many people think the Canucks are a Stanley Cup contender is because they play like it and they act like one. And, I mean, coming out of the All-Star break, those All-Star guys, Tocchet told them first practice in Carolina, you guys can take off, and they said there's no way. There's clearly a great dressing room. That's why I know everybody wants to see the Canucks acquire 4 or 5 guys. No. This is a tight-knit group. Tocchet said it on Toronto. You don't want to upset the apple cart. You have come this far, 50 games. They're the number 1 team in the NHL with this group. Why not, reward these guys by, keeping this group together? Maybe they add a depth defenseman or maybe a depth forward. But man, oh man, I mean, this group together has been sensational all year.
Yeah, I know, Thomas, you and Ian were talking to Tocchet last night about, hey, isn't this great that it looks like they haven't lost anything over the 10 days they had off or whatever it was for the All-Star break. And just the way the schedule has worked out for them, this is a very good team. And they come back after the All-Star break with all those players in Toronto for the All-Star weekend. And they have a game against Carolina, in Carolina. That's a good hockey team. And then the next night, Thursday night, they take on Boston. So if they were sleepy at all getting back, from All-Star break, that goes out the door playing those 2 opponents. I think that's a perfect setup. Maybe it didn't seem like it when you looked at it for, at the start of the season. That's a perfect setup for them playing those teams. You got to be awake against those guys.
Absolutely. And everything's coming up roses for them, guys. They got a kid in Abbotsford right now, the American League Hockey League MVP in the All-Star game. That guy's going to have a tough time getting a sniff in the roster. Podkolson's down there. I mean, it looks like these guys, trying to crack the Vancouver forward group is very hard. It's who comes out? Name one guy you would take out right now for a kid in Abbotsford. Nobody.
Not for a kid in Abbotsford.
But it's as you say, though, Rick, you don't know what this team's going to look like next year. Like, that's where the Baines story becomes really interesting. This team's going to need affordable depth.
That's why training camp.
That's what I'm saying.
That's why you have training camp, Thomas. Yeah. Oh, you definitely. Hey, the Canucks are not re-signing 8 UFAs. Take that to the bank.
Nope.
They are going to need Baines and Podkolson and some of these guys. And, hey, here's the other one for you. Casey DeSmith makes $3 million a year. I'm having a tough time seeing that him getting that again in Vancouver. Artur Silovs, is he ready to step in and be the backup? There's so many questions for next year, but right now, enjoy what they're doing. It's pretty incredible.
I did want to ask you about Baines, Rick. As you mentioned, AHL All-Star Game MVP, point per game down in the AHL. As you said, though, it's not as if there's an obvious spot. They've been so healthy this year, they haven't even had those chances for call-ups. Now, I did see, I think just since we've been on air, they said they sent Linus Karlsson back down to Abbotsford. He's been up and down all year, obviously. But what do they – like, are they comfortable just having Archie Baines there in Abbotsford for the rest of the year? Would they like to get him a call-up at some point? What do you – What's your sense of what their plan is for Baines?
Jim Rutherford told us on our show, Donnie, that if Podkolson stays down in Abbotsford all year, he has no issues with it. Yep. It's develop, learn, get better. They don't want to bring him up for a game or two like Karlsson. He just keeps coming up, one game goes back. They don't want to do that. They want to bring up Baines and Podkolson when they're ready to be everyday NHL players.
Yeah, and go back to Pittsburgh. Sorry, Rick. Go back to Pittsburgh with Rutherford and Alvin, who would have been around Rust and Gensel, and how
Teddy
those
Bluger.
players
Höglander.
percolated in Teddy Bluger. So in Wilkes-Barre, they percolated and helped that team win a couple of Stanley Cups, and I'm sure that's the model they're trying to fill is, these guys look like they're ready, but, and Detroit did that years ago too, Thomas. You might remember that as well, Jamie. They did that years ago as well, like percolate in the minors, don't bring them up too soon. And meanwhile, things are going really well for the NHL team. The formula looks really good right now.
So he comes up, and he's going to play 9 minutes, right? No power play. So why not stay in Abbotsford, play 20 minutes, power play, penalty killing, and then everyone's going to bitch that they called him up and only played him 9 minutes, right? How does what's his fit? Is he a top 6 or bottom 6? There's so many questions, but they're doing the right thing. Stay down there, work. And I'm going to tell you something else. Tocchet gets all the credit, but I was told that, do not underestimate what the Sedin twins have done in Abbotsford and Vancouver. When they were first hired, everyone thought it was just a gimmick or whatever, No, they were not pushed to the side. These guys are very important at practice, and also their skills guys, Sevskoski. That guy's really good.
Yogi,
yeah. So I was told, look at Thomas laughing.
We're going with Yogi. Thomas.
I was going to say Yogi's a lot easier to say. Make it easy on yourself, Rick. Yogi.
Yeah.
Just listen. I won't say his last name. I'll just say Yogi.
The name
I'm trying to tell a story, Thomas.
Doesn't he play for the Habs?
Look, I was close. I was in the neighborhood. Listen, I was told do not underestimate. There he goes again laughing. You laugh like a hyena, Thomas. Let me finish.
I'm sorry.
Don't underestimate. Don't underestimate what the Twins are doing. Don't underestimate what Yogi is doing.
There you go.
And this coaching, this is the best group of coaches, and also Jeremy Colton. I think it's the best group of coaches the Canucks have had in a long time. Are you happy now?
We got it out.
Yeah, great.
We finished on a high note. Guys, this was awesome. Thanks for doing this as always. We look forward to catching up next week.
Awesome,
Adios.
guys. Thank you so much.
Later.
Bye. That is Don Taylor and Rick Dhaliwal from Donnie and Dhali.
I felt like a
Chat
contestant
TV.
on Hot Ones. You know,
Trying
where
desperately
it's
not
like
to react.
Yeah, I'm trying not to laugh, but I'm like, oh, it's building.